Gehenom is not just a punishment. Is it a punishment? Yes, it is. But I would even go so far as to say it's not primarily a punishment. It's also a punishment. It's primarily a cleansing process, because the fact is, it's just a metaphor that comes to mind. If someone, buys a car and it's an expensive car and it's a high performance car, and a high performance car has a lot of maintenance and there's all these instructions and you need to put special kind of gas in and special expensive oil and you need to change the oil special frequency, etc., etc. The reason they tell you that you have to do all these things and it ends up costing a lot more money is not because they want to punish you. It's not like, oh, you bought an expensive car so you get punished, or you bought a high performance car, you get punished with or it could be clothes, an expensive piece of clothing that's made from a delicate fabric. You have to make sure to take it not just to any dry cleaners, to a real high-level expert dry cleaner, and you need to get their most expensive service, and you need to do it with certain frequency, but you have to keep a certain amount of time between cleanings to make sure that the fabric is protected and it doesn't get damaged. It's not a punishment for buying this expensive piece of clothing, that because you bought this piece of clothing, you're not allowed to get it cleaned except for, you need a certain amount of time between it. You get punished by having to go to the expensive cleaners. That's not the point. The point is the nature of this fabric is that it's delicate. And if you want delicate fabric to last, you need to treat it with appropriate care that's sensitive to the delicate nature of the fabric. It just so happens that the kind of sensitive care that's appropriate to protect the nature of this delicate fabric is very high maintenance, which also ends up being more expensive, etc., etc. So the point is, and if someone doesn't listen, let's take it a step further. Let's say that someone says, honestly, I'm in a rush. I don't have time to go to that special dry cleaners. I'm just going to take it to my local dry cleaners. And anyways, it's like so expensive to get the special dry cleaning. I'll take it to my local dry cleaners. It'll be fine. Take the garment the piece of clothing into the dry cleaners, come to pick it up 3 days later. And you know what? It's not fine at all. And now this expensive piece of clothing is going down the drain. What happened? Is that a punishment for not going to the dry cleaners? The manufacturer told you had to go to special dry cleaners, and I didn't go to special dry cleaners, so I got punished by the piece of clothing getting ruined. It's not a punishment, it's just an outcome. The outcome of not treating the garment with the proper care is that it could get damaged. And then the outcome of that is, if I'm lucky and there is the ability to repair it, the fact that I have to spend this money and take it to a really high-level professional expert tailor, a niche expert tailor or seamstress to get it fixed, and it costs me an arm and a leg to do it, figuratively, is not, again, a punishment because I didn't listen to the instructions. It's just an outcome. I didn't listen to the instructions. The piece of clothing got damaged. If I want to repair that piece of clothing, there's a process, and the process happens to be quite expensive. Right? If I don't want to repair the clothing, I don't have to. But if I want to, this is the cost. When we behave in a way that's not approved by Torah, let's say in a way that doesn't follow the guidelines and commandments of Torah, what we're doing is behaving in a way that doesn't live up to the requirements of a soul being healthy, and it results in the soul being damaged. The same way that not following the instructions results in the piece of clothing being damaged. If we don't treat the soul with the proper care as prescribed by the manufacturer, i.e. creator, what happens is it results in damage, and the soul gets damaged and worn out, and etc., just like a piece of fabric or a garment does. Same thing. And what happens when it gets damaged? If it gets damaged, it needs to be repaired. That's primarily the function of Gehenom, of purgatory, or whatever we want to call it. It's not there primarily as a punishment. It's there in order to repair the damage, because behaving in a way that goes against Torah, that goes against the directives, commandments, and guidelines of the Creator, results in the product being damaged. You don't follow manufacturer guidelines, the product gets damaged. We don't follow Hashem's guidelines for the neshama, for the soul, it gets damaged. Very simple. And if we want to repair that damage, or if in order for the damage to be repaired, there's a process. Right? And let's say, going back to a piece of clothing, the more specialized the piece of clothing is, the more unique the piece of clothing is, the rarer the fabric, the more unique the fabric, the more delicate the fabric, the more expensive the repairs are going to be, the more costly the repairs are going to be. the greater the toll the repairs are going to take on the person. And it's the same thing. The neshama, our neshama, our soul, if we cause damage to it by not following the creator's guidelines, the manufacturer's guidelines, the product gets damaged. And in order for it to be repaired, there's a process, and that process is costly. That process for repairing the neshama, for repairing the damage and cleansing the neshama, cleansing the soul, is what we know as Gehenom or purgatory. And yeah, it happens to be a punishment. It happens to be very uncomfortable.